ISTQ certified QA engineer and a mentor here in Blue Sky Citadel. I'm going to be your tutor for tonight. Tonight we will be looking at test management, which will later on dive into test planning, test strategy. This is one of the very crucial topics in software testing. So I'll encourage each and every one of you to stay away from any sort of distraction. Just like Rita said as well, I would encourage everyone to have a pen and a paper to note down your questions or probably drop them in the chat. You know, sometimes you might have a question and at the end of the class, it might skip you. So yeah, hopefully at the end of the class, once you guys are able to grab this, I can assure you that you are 70% way through of becoming, you know, a QA engineer or software tester and understanding the principles and how to go about it. So this is the table of content. This is the topics we'll be looking at tonight. I'll later on drop this in the chat or I'll send it into the group chat so that you guys can, those of you who would like to, have a look after the class, you know, personal studies, you guys can do that. So we'll be looking at test management. We'll be looking at risk and testing. We'll be looking at entry criteria. We'll be looking at test plan. We'll also be looking at how to design a test plan. We'll be looking at test strategy, and we'll be looking at how to design test strategy. Then after, you guys can bring in your questions and we'll try as much as possible to give you the answers you want. So I think someone or to screen and the person have to. Okay. So someone has connected to two devices. Can the person please mute one of the devices? Because I can hear myself talking. Okay, cool. It looks like the person have muted it. Right. So we are going to look at the definition of test management. What is test management? So test management is the process of planning, controlling, and monitoring the activities related to software testing. And this is to ensure that software meets required quality standards and performs as expected. This also involves the organization, the coordination, and the execution of various tasks associated with testing throughout the software development lifecycle. So we'll look at some of the key components of test management. So in a nutshell, we as QAs, our main role is to ensure that software is working as expected. I know with the previous class, Rita has taken you guys, she has explained to you the roles and the responsibilities of a QA, what is expected of you to do. So this is where it all comes, as in test management, how as a QA you manage your test. You know, so as it's pretty much self-explanatory. It's just the process of planning, controlling, and monitoring the activities of the whole testing life cycle. So what is this component of test management? We have test planning, we have test design, we have test execution, we have test monitoring and control, we have defect management, we have test reporting, we have test environment, and we have risk management. All right. So these are the components that are involved in test management. So what is test planning? So test planning is, I didn't define it. I'm just gonna give like a rough explanation of what these components are. All right. So when it comes to test planning, a test plan outlines the scope, the objective, the resources, the schedule, and approach for testing. This includes the features to be tested, the types of testing to be performed, the criteria for success. So before testing starts, as a QA, you have to plan your test. Okay, you have to plan the whole testing. If it's a feature or if it's a new project, you have to plan it. And it's just like our day in and day life activities. So when you wake up in the morning, obviously you plan your day, you have to, if you have to go to work, you have to go to lunch, whatever you have to do, you have a plan. And same implies when it comes to testing, you have to have a plan. And after you've planned, you have to design. So you have to design your test. And this is like creating a detailed test cases and test scripts based on the test plan and the requirement of the software. It comes naturally. I mean, by experience, you know the type of test cases to write. We do have happy path and unhappy path. Um, it comes with experience, and as time goes on, later on as well, Rita is gonna take you guys through that, how to design your test cases. And after you've designed your test cases, you have to execute your test cases. So this is running the test cases and the script to verify that the software behaves as expected. All right. Then we later on go to test monitoring and control. Guys, if I'm moving fast or if I'm going fast, you can put it in the chat. You go to test monitoring and control. So this is tracking the project of your testing activities, measuring the test coverage, and ensuring that testing stays on, schedule within the budget. And we have defect management, which is one of the key components, which is one of the key things a QA is expected of, because as a QA, you're expected to find bugs, okay? You're expected to find errors, you're expected to find gaps, you're expected to find anything at all that would affect the software from working as expected or from meeting business requirement. So we as QAs, this is where it really comes, defect management. So what is this defect management? Defect management is just recording, analyzing, prioritizing, and tracking defects discovered during testing. So, I mean, during testing, you want to, have this eagle eye to ensure that there are no defects. I mean, every software has got defects because at the end of the day, it's humans that are developing it, and we humans, we make errors. So we as QAs, we have to be very vigilant and, ensure that we find as many bugs as we can. So after you've found your bugs and all of that, after you've tested, you need to make a report. So this is communicating the status and the progress of the report to whoever you are reporting to stakeholders, to your managers, to your test lead, whoever you have to report to. Then you have test environment management. So this is setting up and maintaining the hardware, software, the network configuration required for testing. When it comes to automation and all of that, which you later on dive in, you have to get, even with manual test, you have to get your test data, you have to get your environment and all of that set up. And you also have risk management. So with risk management, you have to ensure that you identify and assess any agitating risks related to the testing processes. So we'll move on to the next slide, which is risks and testing. When it comes to testing, one of the things I mentioned earlier, we QAs we look at is risks. So what is this risk you are talking about? So this risk refers to the possibility of an event occurring that would have a negative impact on the achievement of objectives, And when it comes to software testing in the context of software development, risks can affect various aspects, such as project timelines, cost, the quality, and the user satisfaction. And risks can arise from different sources, including technical issues, human factors, organizational challenges, and external influences. When it comes to the key aspect of risks, this includes identification. So recognizing potential risks that could impact the project or the product before testing starts, you are being given business requirement documents. So you are being business analysts do write acceptance criteria, they do write stories. So before even testing starts, you have to go through these documents to ensure that there are no errors, there are no gaps in the stories. If they are not too ambiguous, you have to check all of that. And there's also assessment. So this assessment is evaluating the likelihood of risks occurring and the potential impact it would have. We have meditation as well. So this is developing strategies to minimize the likelihood and impact of risks. And you have monitoring, so continuous tracking to identify risks and reassessing them as the project progresses. So after you have found defects or you found errors or risks in your project, you just don't have to leave it there. After you have escalated this to it being the business analyst or the developer or whoever is in charge, after you have raised your bag and all of that, you have to monitor. You have to monitor to ensure that this has been, if it's an error, if it's something that is in the business requirement, you have to ensure that it has been fixed. You have to monitor continuously to ensure that is working as expected. We have entry criteria as well. So before you start testing, we have entry criteria. We have a general entry criteria you have to follow, but every organization has got their entry criteria depending on how they've defined it, what they expect, what they want. So what is this entry criteria? Entry criteria are the conditions that must be met before testing activities can be done. So we have entry and exit criteria. So before you test, there are certain activities, there are certain conditions that you have to ensure that these conditions are met before testing can be done. So an example of it is before you test, you have to ensure that an environment is ready. You have to ensure that acceptance requirements or acceptance criteria meet the definition of ready and done. You have to ensure that all these things are ready before testing can start. And as a QA, you can challenge, not as in a disrespectful way, but when a PBI or a requirement hasn't met the definition of ready and done, it doesn't meet the acceptance, the entry criteria, you can tell the business analyst or whoever that, this hasn't met the entry criteria. This is not ready for testing. We can't proceed with this because at the end of the day, if anything goes wrong, if any bug is found in production or after testing, a QA will be the one to be blamed, not asking to be blamed, but at the end of the day, you were the one to test it to ensure that everything is working as expected. So you will be the one that will have to, face the questions that will come up. So the general entry criteria is one is the availability of test plan. So as I have I'm later on going to dive deep into it. Test plan should be developed, reviewed, and approved. This test plan outlines the scope, objectives, the resources, the schedule, and the approach for testing activities. They have to be defined requirements. So all relevant functional and non-functional requirements must be clearly documented and understood. This ensure that testers know what to test against. Pretty much self-explanatory, and I mentioned this. The requirement has to be defined because these requirements are what will guide you to know what to test and what exactly to test. So if these requirements are not defined and if they are not defined properly, you wouldn't obviously know what exactly to test. And when it comes to testing as well, there's nothing like assumption. There's nothing like, oh, okay, this is supposed to, oh, okay, I assume this is supposed to do this. This is supposed to do that. Okay, if I have to log in, I have to enter my username. I have to enter my password. I have to click on login. Okay, yeah, I can log in like that. No, as a keyword, you don't have to assume. These things has to be defined. Okay, if I have to log in, can I log in with an email? Do I have to log in with do I have to log in with a username? Okay, so does the password have to contain special characters? How long does the password has to be? All these things has to be defined so that you can know what to test against. You also need to have a stable build, which is also key. So the software build to be tested must be stable and delivered to the testing environment. And this means that it have passed initial smoke or sanity test. So we have different type of testing environments. It all depends on the organization. So there's like unit test environment, we have QA, we have dev environment, we have test environment, we have staging environment, and we have production environment, which is production is the ones that end users can see. So before these code or this application that you'll be tested in the test environment, it has to be stable. Before it gets to the test environment, it has to be stable, because if your test environment is not stable, it will give you different type of test results. Today, you might go there, you might execute your test case, it will pass. Tomorrow, you go, you will test, and your test case, your test will fail. But it's the same test steps or the same test you are executing. But if you don't have a stable environment, if your build is not stable, it can cause all these issues, going back and forth with the developers and all of that. So you have to ensure that your build is stable. You also have to set up your test environment, which is very necessary and very important. So the test environment should be configured correctly and be available for use. This includes hardware, software, network configurations, and any necessary test data. So as a QA, before you test, you need to obviously have a laptop or a device or whatever you are going to test on. If it's a web application, you definitely, even if it's API or whatever you are testing, even if it's mobile testing, you still need a device, and it's a laptop. You might sometimes, excuse me, you might sometimes have to test on a tablet or a mobile phone or whatever, but whatever the hardware is, you have to ensure that your environment is set up. You have this hardware. You also, if it's a software application you are testing, if it's a web application, if it's a database application, whatever you are testing, you have to ensure that this software is also ready. If there are any network configurations, you have to ensure that these configurations are ready. And you obviously need test data as well, depending on what you are testing. If it's to do with an application form, if it's to do with whatever, as long as you are testing something that involves data, you need to have test data ready. And before you test as well, you need to have your test cases prepared. So most of the time we advise there is something called shift left testing, which is testing early in the life cycle. Once your developers are developing the application, you don't have to wait for them to finish developing the application or to finish working on the PBI before you start writing your test cases. Once they're in the process of developing, you use the requirement that has been given to you, the acceptance criteria, to write your test cases, to prepare your test cases. So right when they are done developing, you can move right into testing, because there are times that in your workplace, you might have a lot of things to test. All right. And you might meet deadlines. For instance, you are working in a 2-week sprint, and developer will use first week, will use maybe 7 or 8 days. to develop whatever they are developing. And on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, they would tell you that we are done with whatever we are developing, so you can test. Meanwhile, sprint is ending on Friday. You can imagine how you're gonna be in a tight space, to do this. So it's very we encourage a lot that we encourage you guys, we will encourage you guys, or we encourage a lot that you guys will, start writing your test cases, will implement shift left testing during this period, so that you guys will not, have to meet deadlines and all of that. All these will be thought, and you guys will go through this with you guys. So I'm moving on to the next slide, which is test plan. That is like the main focus for tonight. Prior to the class, I've been mentioning test plan, test plan, test plan. So what is this test plan I'm talking about here? So test plan is a comprehensive document that outlines the scope, the approach, the resources, and the schedule for testing activities of a project. It provides details, instructions, and guidelines on how the testing will be conducted, ensuring all team members understand the testing process, objectives, and responsibilities. So as at the end of the day, it all depends on your organization. It all depends on where you're gonna, work. Because when you go to some organization, they already have a test plan defined. Some organizations don't have test plan defined. You might be the first QA to do that. You might be the first QA in the team. So you have to know how to document a test plan. Is as a QA, is a must. It's like a weapon. You need to have it on you all the time. Just like you have your laptop on you all the time. You need to know how to, when they wake you up in the morning, oh, hey, can you document your test plan, quickly? You can just, it's something you can do, because it's a very vital document that is needed for testing. So what are some of the components of a test plan? We have test objectives. So the test objectives is like clear goals on what needs to be achieved. Every test plan has a test objective, because before you write this test plan or you document this test plan, you want to have a clear goal of what needs to be achieved. You also need to have your scope of testing. So your scope of testing is like features to be tested and not to be tested. Because once you're about to test or whatever that is being developed, you have a priority. You have what you have to look at, what must be tested, what is in scope of the testing. So all these must be stated in the scope of testing in your test plan. We have test criteria. We have entry criteria. So the entry criteria are the conditions that must be met before testing begin. I went through this. We have the exit criteria. So the exit criteria also are conditions that must be met before concluding testing. This includes your test report. This includes your defect report. So before you complete your testing, you need to have like a test report. So test report outlines the number of tests, it outlines all the test cases that were completed, the bugs that were raised, the ones that were fixed, the ones that were deferred, the ones that will be moved to next sprint, the ones that it's a report. So it gives a general summary of what went on during the testing. You also have your test deliverables. So The test deliverables are documents and other output of testing processes. You have testing tasks. So these are specific tasks to be carried out. You also have responsibilities. So each member of the team, each and everyone in the team has a responsibility, you know. So you have to outline all these responsibilities of everyone in the team. And you also have resources. You have human resources as well, which is the test team and their roles. You have environmental resources, which is the test environment, tools and hardware, software requirement. You have schedule. So you have the timeline and the milestones, and you have risks and contingencies. So in your test plan as well, you have to you have to state potential risks and mitigation strategies. So for instance, during this testing period, what happens if one of our testers falls sick, or what happens if the tester falls sick? Will this affect will this affect the testing? Will we have to hold on the project? Will we have to get, you know, a resource elsewhere to come and join the team? Because at the end of the day, you are working with deadlines. You have to meet these deadlines. Business is waiting on you to, you know, go live or to deploy whatever you are developing. So what happens? Okay, what also happens if we run out of budget? You know, what happens? What happens? So you need to have like this potential risks and the mitigation strategies. What would we do when this happen? You also have approval and sign-offs. So you need a formal approval of the test plan. This will come when after you've documented your test plan, either your test manager or whoever is your test lead or your manager, whoever you report to, will have to go through this test plan, you know, to ensure that, okay, everything you have stated in the test plan meets what we need, and then they can approve and sign off. This takes us to how to design a test plan. After this, we would have a little bit a very short practical session where I would show you guys a sample test plan document. And I mean, you guys would later on, in the background, have to write this test plan and bring it to us for us to review and to approve. So how do you design test plan? First of all, you have to understand the project. You need project documentations. So you have to review requirements. You have to design document, and the design document and the user stories. You have to go through all these things, because these things are what will help you to understand the project. Stakeholder communication. You have to understand expectations and gather input from stakeholders, because these stakeholders, they are the ones that are like the product owners. They are in charge of, they want you to develop an application, or they want you to develop whatever they want, like whatever they want you to develop. Okay. So they make decisions, and you have to communicate with them. You have to understand their expectations. You have to gather input from them. So for instance, a stakeholder will tell you that, okay, we want this project to last this long. This is what we are expecting. This is what we want. So once you communicate with the stakeholders, you understand their expectations, you gather this input from them. It will help you to design your test plan. So after you've done this, you have to define the test plan. Okay. So defining test plan, you need an introduction. All right. So with this introduction, you need a purpose. The purpose, you need to clearly state the purpose of the test plan. what is the purpose of this test plan? What do we want to achieve? Which audience is it targeting? You understand? You need to have a purpose of this test plan. Then you need to have a scope of the test plan. So you define the features, the functionalities, and the components to be tested. Okay. Then from there, you outline your objectives. Okay. So what are the primary goals of the testing effort? What are the objectives? What do you want to achieve at the end of this project? What do we want to achieve? Then you go to your test items. So under the test items, you have software components. You list all the software components, the models, and the features that will be tested. So if, for instance, it's a HR application, I don't know the application you guys are working on at the moment, but if it's an e-commerce application, whichever application it is, you have to list, all right, you have to list the models and the features that will be tested. You also need to, the hardware components, you need to specify the hardware required for testing. Then that brings us to test approach and the test strategy. You need to list your test approach and your test strategy. So this involves test levels. We have different type of test levels, which is the unit testing, integration testing, system testing, acceptance testing. This is like the test pyramid. So unit testing. So this is tests for individual components. So for instance, if I'll always use a login as example. So if you are testing the user, the email test field, you are testing that alone to ensure that, okay, this user test field needs to accept this number of characters, this blah, blah, blah. You are testing just that component of it. So that is like a unit testing. You are testing just that test field to ensure that this thing is working as expected. This feature is working as expected. But most of the time, unit testing is done by developers. But even with that, they are the test level. So you have to specify it in your test plan. Then you have integration testing. So you test the interactions between integrated units. So after you have tested your user test field, you have tested your password test field, your login. You want to test all these things to ensure that, okay, they are working as expected. Okay, if after I log in, what else do I do? Okay, so does this integrate with this? Does this work with this? That's sort of like integration testing. And there are times as well that the software application you'll be working on will maybe integrate with other software parties or other components, third party development companies. So you have to test these integrations to ensure that these integrations are working as expected. You also have system testing. You have to stage your system testing. System testing is like the end-to-end testing of the entire system. So after this application, let's say it's an e-commerce application, so you want to test end to end from when you create an account to when you select an item, when you put it in the cart, and when you pay for it. This is like an end to end. You are testing the flow of the whole system. Then you have acceptance testing. It's the validation against requirements and user needs. It's just like testing is like an acceptance testing. Okay, testing that, okay, this thing that we've developed, this thing is working as expected. This is like the final type of testing to ensure that your application is working as expected. So you have to state all these test levels in your test plan. You also have to state the test types. So when it comes to the test types, we have functional testing. Functional testing is ensuring that system meets functional requirement. So like the functions you have, okay, I can put an item in a cart. I can I can create an account. I can do this. These are functional testing. And you have non-functional testing as well. So non-functional testing, an example of non-functional testing is like performance testing, assessing the system performance under load. You have security testing, checking for vulnerabilities. You have usability testing, evaluating user interface and experience. And you have compatibility testing, ensuring compatibility across different environments. These are non-functional testing. You have to state all of this in your test plan document. Then you have to state your test design techniques. So with the test design techniques, we have black box testing, techniques like equivalent partitioning, boundary value analysis. You have whiteboard testing, so techniques like statement coverage, decision coverage. You have exploratory testing, ad hoc and experience-based testing. These things have to go in your test plan document. And you have the test environment, the setup. You have to define the hardware, the software, the network configuration, and the tools required. Maintenance, plan for maintaining and updating the test environment. You also have test deliverables. So with the test deliverables, they are your test cases, detailed description of test cases, including the inputs, actions, and expected results. You have the test scripts, you have your test data, you have your test logs, you have your defect report, you have your test summary report. These are the test deliverables. You also need your test criteria, which is the entry criteria. So I've mentioned it already, preconditions that must be met before testing begins, environment setup, code complete. You have to list your exit criteria as well. So the completion conditions, conditions considered testing to be completed. All test cases are executed. There are no crucial defects, all these things. Your schedule and resource, timeline. You have to state the detailed schedule with milestones for test planning, test execution, and reporting. You need your resources, allocation for human resource test tools, other necessary tools. So let's say you have to state you guys are using Azure DevOps, so you need to you need to mention these tools. You are using Azure DevOps or test management. For test execution, you are using Postman for API. You'll be using, I don't know if it's C Sharp. I think it's C Sharp with Visual Studio for automation testing. You need to outline all these things. You also have to mention the roles and responsibilities of each and everyone in the team. So the test manager, who is like the responsibility for the test plan. But just like I said, sometimes you might be the only QA in the organization and you have to write your test plan. So, you know, you have the test engineers, they design, execute, and report on tests. You have the developers, they assist with test environment setup and defect resolution. You have the stakeholders. Yeah, you guys have business analysts, you have scrum masters. Yeah, you have to list all these roles and responsibilities in your test plan. And you also need to list your risks and contingencies, the risk analysis, any potential risks, it being resource limitation, technical challenges. I quite remember there was one time that there was this project that there were technical challenges, so they had to get like an external resource. So the project had to be on hold for a certain amount of time, for the external resource to get into the project to, help with these technical challenges. A lot of things can happen. So you just have to write a little bit of this risk analysis in your test plan, mitigation plan, strategies to mitigate identified risks. If this happens, what are we going to do? If that happens, what are we going to do? You also, after you've written your test plan, that is when it has to be approved and signed off. So you have the review process. You have to ensure that the test plan is reviewed by all relevant stakeholders and sign off. You need to obtain formal approval and projects from project management and stakeholders. Also continuous monitoring and updating, because I mean, at the start of the project, you wouldn't know everything, or let's say not that you wouldn't know everything, but let's say in the middle of the project, the project is being put on hold, or maybe new features or functionalities are being added, or for instance, you get a new resource, you have to update all of these in your test plan. And feedback loop, you have to incorporate feedback from test execution, to refine the plan. So that brings us to test strategy. So we have test plan and we have test strategy. A lot of time, most people get confused with this. We have test plan and we have test strategies. They've all got a role to play. I'm going to go through the test strategy. And after I go through the test strategy, I'm going to we're going to go through the difference between test plan and test strategies. Here, you guys will have to document or write or complete both documents. You will have to write a test plan, and you need to have or write a test strategy document as well. So what is this test strategy? A test strategy is a high-level document that outlines the testing approach and methodologies to be followed in a software development project. So the test strategy is saying that it's a document that outlines the testing projects and methodologies, while test plan is like the overall document for the project. So test strategy is focusing on the testing approach and the methodologies for which has to be followed in a software development project. Okay, so it provides a framework for testing process, ensuring that all aspects of the product are tested efficiently and effectively. Okay, so the test strategy, it guides the test planning and execution phases, and it's essential for ensuring that products meet its quality goals. Okay, so I think if we are a bit attentive here, or if we've been following the class, from the definition of the test strategy, we can already tell the difference between the test plan and the test strategy. Right. So let's go into the components of test strategy. So with the components of test strategy, we have test levels, which is unit, integration, system, and acceptance testing. I did mention this in the test plan. So you have test levels, all right, which is the unit, integration, system, and acceptance testing. You have to define this in your test strategy. You also need to define the test types, which is the functional, non-functional, which is the performance, usability, security, and the others. Okay, you have to have your test design techniques. So if we notice here, the test strategy is focusing more on test, because with the first three components I have outlined, it's saying test levels, test types, test design techniques. Okay. And with the test design techniques, I mentioned earlier on that we have black box testing, we have whiteboard testing. So under black box testing, we have equivalent partitioning, boundary value analysis, etc. I don't know if you guys have done these yet, these test design techniques, but if you haven't, as the internship progresses, you guys will do it. You guys will have a better understanding of it. So whiteboard testing is like statement coverage, branch coverage, etc. You have test automation strategy. So what to automate and tool selection. So depending on the project, if automation is involved, you have to give a test strategy for your automation. So there are times that when you join an organization, they might already have test automation tools in place. There are instances also whereby when you join an organization, they might not have any automation tools in place. You might be the first QA to implement test automation. In me, for instance, when I started working in my organization, we didn't have automation in place. So I had to liaise with my manager or the business to implement test automation, and we had to, select the tools for automation and all of that. So all these things you need to have a strategy for this, the tools to use, the language to use, because at the end of the day, you have to also look at what the developers are using so that you can, work closely with that just to help hand in hand. Okay. You have to state your test data management. You need that in your test strategy. So data requirements and handling. You also need configuration management, so version control and configuration tracking. We have something called Git, and all of that is in the early days. I don't really want to go deep into that to confuse you guys. But as time goes on, all these will be taught. You guys will understand what version control is and what configuration tracking is. We do have defect management. I've mentioned it already. This is the process of logging, tracking, and resolving defects. We have test environment setup, configuration and maintenance of test environment, and the metrics and reporting. So key metrics to track and reporting mechanisms. So the component of test strategies has really is more focused on the test, the test, whereby the test plan is sort of like focusing on the project. Oh, right. So that takes us to how to design test strategy. So pretty much the same, before you design a test strategy, you have to first understand the project requirements, because without understanding the project requirement, you won't be able to know the do's and the don'ts. So you have to review documentation. When it comes to QAs, documentation is very necessary and very important, because these documentations are what you'll be tested against. These documentations are what is defining the business needs, the business requirements. So these documentation, you would deal a lot with documentation, reviewing documentation. You have to study the requirements, the design document and the user stories to understand this, the project, to be able to design your test strategy. You also have to stakeholder interview, pretty much the same like with a test plan. You have to gather input from project stakeholders to understand their expectations, the project goals. You have to clarify the project goals, the quality and, quality objectives. You have to define the scope and the objectives. You need to define the scope of testing, identify what is in the scope and what is out of scope for testing. You need to have your objectives. You need to define the main goals of the testing effort, such as ensuring functionality, performance, and security. You also have to determine the test approach. So this is also the testing levels, which I've already gone through, which is the unit testing, the integration testing, system testing, acceptance testing. You also have to define your testing types. So functional testing, ensuring that the system behaves according to requirements, and non-functional testing, so performance testing, assessing the speed, the responsiveness, the stability of the application, security testing, you have to do SQL injections. You have to ensure that, I mean, no one can, you have to ensure the security of the application. You also have to ensure the usability. You have to evaluate the user interface and the user experience. If it's got a UI, if it's a web application, you have to, usability testing is going on the application to ensure that, okay, when I click on this, it responds. Okay, we have the logo here. Okay, this is here. How user friendly the application is, because we all know how hard it, like how frustrating it can be to use an application that is not user friendly. I quite remember a few months ago, I was trying to sign on to this leisure center, which is a few miles away from my house. And I was on their website for over a week, just trying to, register to get a membership, and I couldn't get it done. It was so frustrating. So I had to go to the leisure center to register. I couldn't do it online. And it sometimes really gets frustrating when you are trying to use an application or web application that is not user friendly. So as a QA, you have to ensure that, this application is user friendly, and you also have to check the compatibility. So you need to have a compatibility testing, ensuring that system works across different browsers, devices, and iOS, like and OS. So it's compatibility testing is a very key one as well. Um, for instance, when you are testing, you have to ensure you test on different browsers, Chrome. You have to test on Edge, Firefox. This type of testings, you have to do it, and you have to state all of this in your um test strategy document. So you also have to state your test design techniques, which I've mentioned, black box testing, based on the specifications without looking at the internal code structure. Um, White box testing, this is based on the knowledge of the internal code structure. You have to exploratory testing as well. So exploratory testing is just like, if you already have a UI in place, you can just go on the application, kind of explore, click there, click here. Okay, this has to do this has to do that. You know, then plan the test environment, which is also very key and very important. You set up your setup and configuration, your environment maintenance. You also have to develop test automation strategy as well. So automation goals, identify what to automate and the reasons behind, regression test, performance test. So when it comes to automation testing, it's not everything that can be automated. I mean, I'll give you an example. For instance, you are working on a web application, and you can obviously or quickly just manually test the logo to ensure that, okay, the logo is pointing at the right side of the application. Instead of you to, waste your time to automate and to write code to do all of that, you can just manually do it. So there are things you automate. We have automation candidate. We have like test candidates for automation, and we have the ones that you don't automate. Okay. And we have something like regression testing, which is very crucial, when it comes to one of the testing types. You want to have like a regression suite, and it's best to automate regression, your regression teas or your regression testing. It's best to automate this, because it helps for faster feedback and faster deployment as well. When it comes to, you have to state your tools selection. So choose the tools and the frameworks that will be used for automation. Then the scope of the automation, you define which components and features will be automated, maintenance. So you plan for maintaining and updating automated test scripts. Defect management, defects lifecycle, you have to define the process of logging, tracking, and resolving defects. Defect has got its life cycle. I think you guys did that last week, Friday. So you also need to have your defect life cycle in your test strategy. When it comes to defects, you have to name, like you have to list the severity and the priority. So you have to establish criteria for categorizing your defects, what is the severity, what will be a severity and what will be a priority. Defect reporting, you have to determine tools and processes for reporting defects. Your metrics and reporting. So key metrics, yeah, this is identifying metrics to be tracked. Example, your test coverage, your defect density, like if your test has passed or failed. Test coverage is something to also look out for, because once testing is completed, you want to know your test coverage. You want to ensure that you have, covered or achieved 100% test coverage. You have tested everything, to ensure that you haven't mixed any bug at all. Reporting mechanism. So you have to decide how and when reports will be generated and communicated. Risk management. So when it comes to risk management, risk identification. So you identify potential risks that would impact testing. Also risk mitigation. So you plan strategies to mitigate and identify risks. Contingency plans, you develop plans for handling unexpected issues. All these things have to be in your test strategy documents. You also have to define the roles and the responsibilities. So the test manager, the test engineers, the developers, the stakeholders. If you don't have, here you have business analysts, scrum masters, and all of that, you put them. Then you have your review and approval. After you've documented all this, it has to be reviewed and it has to be approved. Okay, so that brings us to, I know when it comes to test plan and test strategy, we have a few, key components that are sort of like similar, but they are not the same. They are two different documents. So now we will look at the difference between test plan and test strategy. Okay. So when it comes to test plan, test plans describes the detailed approach, the activities, and the schedule for testing a specific project or release. Okay, so test plan describes the detailed approach, activities, and schedule for testing a specific project or release. So you can have a big project, okay? You can have one project you are developing, let's say an e-commerce website, HR website. But this project can be deployed or will be released in versions. So let's say you have a version 1, you have a version 2, you have a version 3. So in a situation like that, you need to have the test plan. You can either have the test plan for the whole project or the release. You can also, test plan also provides specific instructions on what will be tested, how it will be tested, who will do the testing, and when the testing will take place. Okay. It also includes detailed components such as test objectives, test criteria, test deliverables, schedules, resources, responsibilities, risks, and approval process. It focuses more on the execution of testing activities for a particular project or phase within a project. Okay, so these when it comes to the differences, this is the purpose of a test plan. Okay. Describe the detailed approach, activities, and schedule for testing a specific project or release. It provides specific instructions on what will be tested, includes details, components such as text objective, test criteria, test deliverables, and it focuses on the execution of testing activities for a particular project or phase within a project. And this is test strategy. Okay. So the test strategy, it outlines the overall approach and methodologies for testing across multiple projects or releases. So because the test strategy focuses more on, the testing, because when I was going through the test strategy, I was like mentioning test, test that. So with the test strategy, it outlines the overall approach and methodologies for testing across multiple projects or releases. So test strategy focuses more on what? The testing methodologies, and it provides a high-level overview of the testing approach, focusing on principles, techniques, guidelines, rather than specific details. So with the test strategies, it provides a high-level overview of testing approach, focusing on the principles, the techniques, because when I was going through it, I was mentioning the levels of testing, the type of testing that will be done. So it focuses on the testing approach, and it defines broad aspects such as testing levels, types, design techniques, automation strategy, test environment, and risk management. I clearly stated all these when I was mentioned, on how to write a test strategy. So it defines the broad aspects such as the testing levels, types, design techniques, the automation strategy, and also offers guidance for testing activities across various projects or phases, ensuring consistency and alignment with organizational goals. So with the test strategy, it offers, guidance for testing activities across how to test, how to go about your testing, across various projects or phases, ensuring consistency and alignment with organizational goals. This brings us to the end of test management, which we've gone through the test plan and the test strategy. So now we'll go through, you've seen the theory aspect of it with a lot of, definitions. Now we'll go through the document itself so that you guys would see how it looks like. I don't know if we can give you guys this document so that you guys can use it as a guideline to write the test plan for this project. So I don't know if Rita, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
So would you want us to
pause the recording for a minute?
Yeah. And right. So this is a sample test plan document. So you have like test plan for whichever project you are working on. So you have your project name, yeah. Then you have your log. So kind of like, so sometimes, so for instance, test plan can be in versions. So let's say you complete the test plan, you give it, you send it over to stakeholders for approval. and you are being told to come and change something. So once you finish that, you write, you write the version, you write the date of completion, the name of the person, and the description. So let's say you've completed your test plan, you take it over to your stakeholder or your test manager for an approval, and it asks you to add more things or as you update it. The next time you finish updating, you have to write maybe version 2, the dates change. You have to keep track of these things, the changes. So you have like a log kind of here that you keep this track of changes. Then you have an introduction. So I think I mentioned this. You have your scope, your in scope, your out of scope, your objectives, the roles and responsibilities, the test methodology. You have the overview, the test levels, backcharge, suspension criteria and resumption criteria. You have your test completeness. You have your test deliverables, your resources, and the environment, your testing tools, your test environment. You can also define your terms and acronyms. So let's say, for instance, if you are using Azure DevOps, some people call it ADO. So you can write this ADO and you can be like, okay, like this is Azure DevOps. There are lots of acronyms as well. You have like if you have like API, the full meaning of API is application programming interface. You have like AUT, which is application under test. These are your terms and acronyms because you want to define this so that when a non-technical person is reading your test plan document, they can understand. So the introduction, you give a brief introduction of the test strategies, the processes, and the workflow used for the project. You can also give a brief introduction of the project, what the project is about, then the scope, the in scope, the defined features, and the functions that will be tested. The ones that will not be tested will go under out of scope. You have quality objectives. You have the roles and responsibilities. So you have the QA analyst, you have the test manager, the configuration manager, you have developers, installation team, whatever. You have, your test methodology. So you have the overview. You either state if you are working in an agile, if you are working in a waterfall, you state all of that, your test levels. You state your bug triage, suspension criteria, test completeness, your test deliverables. Here are the sample deliverables, your test plan, your test cases, requirement usability metrics, your bug report. Here you need to mention all your test deliverables. You also have to mention your resource and environment needs. You need to make a list of the tools, that you'll be using. You can also add like sort of like images for these tools. So like the logos for these tools. You can also add diagrams to your your test plan to make it a little bit more lively. Your test environment. Um, so which software you're gonna use, like which Windows version, which iOS version, so the terms and acronyms like API, here you have application programming interface, AUT, you have application under test, you know, you define all of these things in your test plan document. So I'm also gonna show a test strategy document. 1 second. The strategy template. Okay, so this is an example of a test strategy template. So with that one as well, you have the name of the project, is a test strategy. You have your revision history, the date, the version, the author, the description. You have your table of contents, so the scope, the test approach, the test environment, testing tools, release controls, risk analysis, reviews and approval, the scope, who reviewed the document, who approved this document, testing activities carried out and with timelines. You have your test approach, the process of testing levels, roles and responsibility of each member, type of testing, testing approach, adding new defects. You have your test environment, you have to define the number of required environment and setup required for each environment. You have to define the backup of test data and restore strategy, your testing tools that will be used for automation, tools that will be used for manual testing, your release control, release management plan with appropriate version history that will make sure that test execution for all modifications in that release. The risks, list all the risks you can estimate, give a clear plan to mitigate the risks, and also a contingency plan, reviews and approval. So all these activities are reviewed and signed off by the business team. And yeah, a summary of the changes should be traced, at the beginning of the document along with approved date, name, and comment. So this is the test strategy. This is a sample test strategy document as well. So yeah, you can pause the recording now. And I don't know if you have
plan at all. Did anyone created a test plan? Okay, there's a question on the chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dakwa. You were saying something?
I say on my own, I didn't create any test plan.
I'll put you in the parking lot.
Even if with this ones as well.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That was why I said do a research. If you have done a research, you will see.
I'll work on it. It's not that maybe, but I didn't really get it.
So
for me to
Mr. Deji wants you guys to create a test plan each, I think. I don't think. Then the test strategy will then be for the team. I think that's what he said. I don't know, maybe he might drop it in the chat for you people again. But yeah, hence that's why this class is coming in today, so that you guys can create a test plan before the testing phase starts, which you guys are about to now. So Rexford, do you want to take the question on the chat, please?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Samuel, so you said in the case where we have more than one tester, is the test plan and the test strategy developed by each? No. So the test plan and the test strategy is not developed by each tester. So for instance, if you have 5 testers or 3 testers, each tester will not develop a test plan or a test strategy document. There might be a situation or a case whereby you wouldn't even have to develop a test plan or test strategy, because when you join an organization, they already have that in place. So it's not something that you have to do. And also is the test manager or the test lead responsibility to design a test strategy and a test plan document. All right. But I'll give you an example. When I started working, I was the first QA to be employed in organization. So we didn't have any testing processes. We didn't have any automation in place. We didn't have anything at all. So if I didn't learn how to create a test plan and a test strategy document on this platform or here in this course, I wouldn't have been able to do it. That is why Mr. Deji or everyone on this platform, like the team, encourages and will like allows each and every one of you or you guys to come as a team to develop it because it helps. And once you imagine being the first QA to join an organization and they don't have a test plan in place, and you're like, oh, you ask for a test plan, and you're like, oh, we don't have a test plan in place. And you're like, oh, okay, I can create a test plan. I can develop a test plan for the project. You might like you just came and you're already initiating things. It will be at your own advantage, you know. So to answer your question, there are times that you wouldn't have to. It's not no, it's done by one member of the team, and also there are times that you might have the opportunity to do it. There are times that you might not have the opportunity to do it. It might be already in place in the organization. And you don't do it in every sprint. So just like I mentioned, you have it for the overall project, but let's say if the project you are delivering in releases or deployment in versions, then you will need a test plan for each release or each version that you deploy. There's a way you can also write test plan on Azure, which that one is done in sprints, but that one is quite different from, this is like the, what was it called? Should I say original, or this is the traditional test plan, but the one in Azure just helps you to organize your test cases for each sprint. So there's a feature on Azure DevOps called test plan. Yeah, but this is different. I hope that answers your question, Samuel. No worries. Has anyone else got?
Any more question, guys? Anything you are not clear on?
Okay,
I
so
wanted to ask, in a situation, because, say for instance, the BAs normally have this, then QA,
Dapo, you are breaking up a little bit.
okay, you can't hear me?
No, you were breaking up a little bit. You said if BAs, well,
Let me, I say, in a situation, we are talking about test plan and test cases. That BAs normally write test cases. The QA will write test plan.
no, no. As a QA, your main job is to write test cases. So I don't know who told you that anyway, or is it something you're just did
No, I
anyone?
think he's asking. He's
Oh,
asking.
you're asking? No, no. So QAs write business requirement documents. They write business specifics. They define what the business wants. So they obviously translate the business needs into documentation. And before they do that, they analyze. I think the other time one of your colleagues asked the question, and when I was answering, I did mention that. So a business can be like, oh, we want to do this, we want to implement this, we want to do that. So a BA will be the one to analyze these things and tell the business, okay, if we do this, it's gonna be right for us. This is what our competitors are doing. This is gonna help. That's their job. Okay. And they have to break these things down because the business requirement document is like, let's say, a big document, and they have to break this thing down into requirements. They have to break it down into small chunks. So in each sprint, you work on maybe a feature, you work on a feature and a feature. So business analysts, they do that in the beginning of the project, or as the project goes on. I mean, with Agile, it goes on, starts all over again. But as a QA, anything to do with anything you hear test is QA, because you are the tester. So you will define your test plan, your test strategy, you will write your test cases, you will execute your test cases. There are instances whereby BAs can help with acceptance testing, because most of the time you can also help with acceptance testing, but usually they want like a third eye, or because the BA is the one who defined the requirement, they would be involved in acceptance testing just to ensure that everything is working as expected. But anything testing is QA. And if you are confused with what maybe they are writing on the board at the moment, those ones are product backlog items. They are the requirements. They are writing acceptance criteria and all of that. So yeah. I hope that answers your question.
I think, yeah.
Don't you guys shouldn't get lost. Don't feel lost at all. You'll be fine. Keji.
Hi, Rexler. Thank you so much for the lecture. So my experience is mainly in like waterfall environment, and obviously this is agile. And we had our first discussion yesterday, sort of reviewing the user stories with the BAs. Now I want to understand obviously what the next step is. Would that be writing the test plan, and does it mean that in the test plan, we have to take into consideration all of the user stories that has been written so far? Or do we just focus on each test required for each sprint?
Okay. So if I'm to get your question right, you just want to, okay, let me explain it. I got it. You guys are writing the test plan because this is the start of the project. Okay. Once you document this test plan and you document your test strategy, you wouldn't have to write it every sprint. Okay. It's because it's like the start of the main project. That is why you are putting these things in place. And when it comes to working in agile environment, you work in sprints. Okay. And every sprint, we've got sprint ceremonies. And at the start of every sprint, you have a sprint planning, which I believe you guys did yesterday, if that's what you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah, you have sprint planning. So that is when the business and the Scrum Masters will facilitate the meeting, the business analysts will read the requirements, the acceptance criteria. Testing starts from there anyway, because you guys will ask questions. Okay, so you want a user to be able to log in. Okay, I've mentioned this already, but does the user need to log in with an email? Do they have to log in with a username? Once they are reading the acceptance criteria to you guys, they are reading the requirement, you guys will be asking questions, so the testing starts from there. So after you are done with the sprint planning, you put in your the effort you are going to put in the sprint, you estimate the PBIs. Then you guys will have to start writing your test cases based on the acceptance criteria that the business analyst has defined.
Okay.
Yes, you guys will have to start writing your test cases whilst the developers are also developing the user stories. Because I mentioned this earlier during the class that, for instance, if your sprint ends next week Thursday, your sprint ends next week Friday, or whenever it ends, it's a 2-week sprint, and the developers the developers finish developing it on Thursday, on next week Thursday, you only have a day to test, and you will be in a very tight space to do that, test all these different kind of scenarios. So it's very advisable to start writing your test cases early, and at the end of whenever they finish developing the PBIs, you can just execute your test cases. If there are bugs, you raise the bugs and you you tag your developers. So after this is done, I think you guys have gone through the agile ceremonies or what. At the end of the sprint, you do as every day you do daily stand up to keep up with what you've been doing. Then after that, you would have a sprint review. I think it's sprint review. So after the sprint review, you showcase what you've done to your stakeholders. Then you have a retrospective, which all you guys will meet among yourself to discuss what went right, what did it go, what went wrong, how you guys can improve, stuff like that. And it starts all over again. You start your sprint planning and blah 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 to the end of the project.
Okay, so thank you so much for clarifying that. So for the test cases, obviously we'd need to get that also approved, isn't it?
I don't
When
know
we-
how you guys, Rita, are they getting their test cases approved? In a real world,
Yeah.
obviously, your test manager or whoever, your QA lead will have to approve your test cases.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I don't know if
Okay.
Rita, are their test cases will their test cases be approved? Okay, maybe Rita is in the kitchen, that's fine. But yeah, yeah, maybe. I don't know about that yet.
Okay, sorry, my last question. So, for example, now I think on the DevOps board, I think they've approved or committed about, I think I saw 3 user stories on there. Does that mean that we would have 3 test cases, or it could be more than, obviously for one user story, there could be multiple test cases, yes or no?
Yeah. So when it comes to test cases, you need to write different scenarios, all right? So you need to write happy path and unhappy path. So
Yeah.
positive scenarios and negative scenarios. Okay. So the positive scenario is what the application or what is stated in the acceptance criteria, what the system is defined to do. That is the happy path. And you also write unhappy path. Okay. Because some end users can be crazy. Let's say you put your items, blah, blah, you're on an e-commerce website, you put your items in the cart, you want to check out, okay. You test with a correct bank card, to pay for the items. And you also have to test with an invalid card details. Because you want to ensure that, okay, what happens when someone inputs anything into the card details? Will the system accept it? Because imagine you are working for any e-commerce, Marks and Spencers, whatever, and you are you are developing the application and you don't test that, and anyone can go on their website and buy something with a fake credit card or just input anything and stuff like that. So it comes with experience. Don't worry, Rita will take you guys through that. You guys will write few test cases. It comes with experience. You would know the kind of test cases to write, and the ones that like the happy path and the unhappy path.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can have like one PBI or one user story, and you can have 100 test cases. Yeah, so
Many, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know if I can just add that I noticed obviously with what we're doing that I didn't like there isn't like a customer journey like process flow because from my own experience in the past I used to rely on the customer journey from when it was mapped and that's obviously waterfall methodology, but like with agile I noticed that we didn't map any customer journey because that can also aid with how the test cases can be written or what to expect.
yeah, that's true. It really depends on the business analyst, to be honest. And I don't think they do
I
that.
think sorry to cut you, Rexford.
Yeah, come on, madam.
KG, you are the BA, right?
No, in real life, yes, I'm a BA, but
Yeah,
the
so
QA,
that's
no.
why you are thinking like that. So
Okay.
anything to do with the BAs, we won't be able to answer that. But in terms of testing, yeah. So I think you are looking at the BA perspective. So, but having said that, what we are doing here is we kind of start from the scratch. I think I've mentioned this in the last class. We start with a greenfield application, but I don't even know what do you know the environment you people are working on? I don't know the environment you people will
That's
be working.
SharePoint. We are working on SharePoint.
SharePoint. Okay, so yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be from the scratch. I'm assuming it should. It might, because I don't think anything has been done on that. Even the ones the advanced are doing now is also from the scratch. So yeah, so when it's like that, I think if it depends on the pace on how you guys work. If you are able to cover a lot, I think you were the one that was talking about 3 stories being on the board, and for 11 testers, the BAs need to do more so that everyone can have at least 1 story to themselves. But I think with the approach you guys will be using for testing, one person can test more than one PBI.
Okay.
Yeah, so having said that as well, it depends on the project you are working on. And because you people will be starting from scratch, so I really don't know what is on the SharePoint, to be honest. So like as I said, you will always start from the header, then the body, then to the. So if you are talking about customer journey, it also depends on the kind of project we are working on. Say, for instance, if it's e-commerce, yeah, we might have customer journey and all those things added to it. So if it's e-learning platform, it might be a different tone. So it depends on the project we are working on. So
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
yeah. Yes, yeah, Restful, she's a BA, senior BA. I think she said she works with Barclays. So she should be teaching the BAs.
Then the guys are lucky to have her then.
Exactly, yeah. So I will
But
expect you more.
one
Don't wear
that
your
sounds now. Maybe one write a
sorry,
test
that
case
one.
for.
Yeah,
Can
we'll
you
go
hear me?
into that in a minute now. Hold on, let me just conclude. So KG, one thing I would say is being a BA, just
Yeah.
drop everything.
Yes.
Otherwise, it will impact your learning curve.
Yes.
So don't think as a BA, think as a tester. And with your previous experience, use it to add that skills into your testing role. So in a case whereby you see a requirement that is not well predefined, it does not align, not requirement, acceptance criteria that does not align with a requirement. For you as a BA, you should be able to spot that easily. And since you are able to spot that easily, then you then wear the hat of a QA and then be able to ask questions. You should be able to ask more. So I will expect more from you, KG, to be honest.
Yeah. No,
So
I did
yeah.
ask questions yesterday, but
No, it's fine. I'm just saying,
learning. It's all the learning curve. Yeah, thank you.
yeah. So don't see yourself as a BA. Don't forget that you are not a BA right now. You are a QA, even though you have that experience. Because sometimes it happens in most cases. You forget that, okay, no, I'm no longer this. This is where I am right now. So yeah. But yeah, I will be expecting more from you. So my eyes will be on you. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Dapo. So, Dapo, so that we can go into the practical quickly.
Okay.
You guys. Rexford, you want to say something? I don't know who's talking. Who wants to talk?
So there are just, I think, 2 questions in the chat, and did someone answer? Oh, okay. I don't know. Okay, thank you.
That's the answer.
Yeah, so Samuel was asking, how do you identify when to do manual testing and automation testing?
One step at a time, I would say. This is just manual. We haven't started automation yet. You will set up your framework. So once you understand manual, how to write your test case, and the good thing is with the manual we are doing here, we kind of implement the Gherkin syntax format into designing our test cases, which is the same method the same approach that you will use on your automation scripts. So it will make it much more easier before we get into the technical bit. Don't worry, who was that? Who asked that question?
Samuel.
Samuel. So get ready, Samuel. I will be expecting more from you as well, since we are kind of over ready. So any other, oh, sorry, Dapo, I think you wanted to say something. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Before we go into the,
No, I just want to have an idea, maybe take for instance, but maybe since you say we are still going into the practical, maybe take for instance, one wants to write a test case for a login to maybe a login password. Take for instance, want to write a test case for that. Maybe how to comment, but maybe when we start the practical, maybe I will key into that.
okay. So I need somebody to share their screen right now and go into the Azure board. So we'll use somebody's screen to go into anyone that know that they have what is it called? Acceptance criteria on their project, on their board. Which team?
I've not been added on that board, so
okay, that's fine. Anyone that has been, so you need to chase that up, Dapo.
Yeah, I've been chasing it up since for the past few days now.
With the Scrum Master?
Yeah.
Okay, if you're not getting, you can escalate it to admin, but first of all, find out what situation
they say
is.
the Scrum Master is on it, that she has passed it
okay.
across so
Okay, just keep reminding them, that's all I'll say. Yeah. Okay. Who is sharing, please? Who is sharing? Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Don't go there. It's fine. This is your board, right? So what's this popping up? Yeah, okay. If you can move, so what do you have on your board that is BA? Okay. Developer has not done their own. The rest for can we work on it? This one that is not in depth, we should be able to, right?
Yeah. As long as it's been committed, yeah, we can.
Okay.
Two of these.
So can you scroll up a bit?
Okay.
Let's see. So oh, you have a lot. Let me check. For this sprint, how many is that?
It's about 9 committed.
Wow, that's good. That's good. Okay, let's look for one. Just open one of them.
Okay.
So first of all, go to the sprint on your left. Let me see what's on the sprint. Let me see if no sprint on your left on this
Okay.
navigation. Yeah. Click on it. Let me see what's there. Okay. So let me start with here. So normally you have it in committed. I don't know, but it can be controversial. I mean, you can start writing your test cases now, while some will wait for it to be in depth. But I think the last time I moved my tickets for the last cohort, they were complaining, why did Rita move her ticket? So yeah, but if you know what you are doing, you don't have to wait. Like Resford said, imagine if for a 2-week sprint and the developer took a whole 9 days to complete the feature. So that's when you start writing your test cases before you start executing. So yeah, if it's in committed, I think you should be able to create a task. So we have a team logo. If you want to create a tax for team logo, click on the plus sign there.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope we are recording. Davis,
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But Rita, how about he stops the recording and starts all over?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
so let this be a different recording. Davis. If
Should I
that's
go back to the bots?
hold on. Let Davis stop this recording and take this one separate.